The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the usual pre-session chatter, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and synthesized voices that represented over 40 species. Lyra stood near the observation deck, her human frame relaxed despite being surrounded by beings that could crush her with minimal effort. She'd learned long ago that confidence was currency in these halls. Beside her, Teve chittered nervously, his 6 legs tapping an anxious rhythm on the polished floor. The creche diplomat was young, barely past his 3rd molt, and this was his first major assignment. His iridescent carapace reflected the station's artificial lighting in prismatic waves. "You seem worried," Lyra observed, her tone gentle. "The Vorlon delegation arrives today," Teve whispered, mandibles clicking. "With their offspring," Lyra raised an eyebrow. The Vorlons were apex predators from a death world that made Earth look like a vacation resort. 3-meter-tall carnivores with natural armor plating and claws that could shred tritanium. Their cubs, however, were another matter entirely. "I've read the briefings," Lyra said. "The cubs are supposed to be spirited." Spirited? Tive's antennae flattened against his head. Last cycle, a cub mauled a Confederation security drone. They had to replace the entire unit. Before Lyra could respond, the chamber doors dilated. The Vorlon delegation entered Ambassador Kreeth, leading, followed by 2 guards and a small, dark shape that bounded between them with unrestrained energy. The cub couldn't have been more than a meter tall, all oversized paws and fluffy coat that belied the lethal creature it would become. Its parents' crimson eyes were softer on the juvenile, more amber than blood red, but the rows of developing teeth were unmistakable as it yawned. The chamber fell silent. Every species present had evolutionary memories of predators, and the Vorlons triggered those ancestral fears like few others. Ambassador Kreeth's translator boomed across the hall. "Honored delegates, I bring greetings from Vorla Prime. Please excuse my daughter, Sareth. She insisted on accompanying us today." The cub Sareth immediately lost interest in the diplomatic proceedings. Her nostrils flared, sampling the exotic scents of dozens of alien species. Her gaze locked onto something near the observation deck. Ontolira. Tiv noticed first. "Oh no. Oh no. No. No." The human attracts its attention. "It's fine," Lyra said calmly, though she tracked the cub's movement with practiced awareness. She'd grown up with dogs, wolves, even rescued a cougar cub once back on Earth. Predator behavior was predator behavior, regardless of the planet. Sareth prowled closer, low to the ground, tail swishing. Other delegates scattered, pressing themselves against walls and behind pillars. A Methian ambassador actually fainted, its gaseous form dissipating in terror. The cub circled Lyra, sniffing audibly. Then, with playful suddenness, she lunged not at Lyra herself, but at the hem of her jacket. Needle-sharp teeth caught fabric, and Sareth pulled, growling in what was unmistakably a play gesture. Tiv made a sound like escaping steam. "It attacks. Someone call security. The human is being..." Lyra simply reached down and, with the same motion one might use to pick up a house cat, grabbed Sareth by the scruff of her neck and lifted. The cub dangled in the air, still gripping the jacket in her teeth, legs kicking uselessly. The chamber froze in collective shock. Ambassador Kreeth's hand moved toward her ceremonial blade. The Vorlon guards tensed, ready to leap to their charge's defense. The entire diplomatic corps held its collective breath, waiting for blood to spill. Then Lyra did something that would become legend across a dozen star systems. She chuckled, not a nervous laugh, not a defiant bark. A genuine, warm, amused chuckle, as she examined the cub still stubbornly attached to her jacket. "Look at you," Lyra said softly, her free hand reaching to scratch behind Sareth's developing crest. "All that predator instinct, and you pick clothing instead of prey. You're going to be embarrassed about this when you're older." Sareth's growl faltered. Her eyes, which had been bright with play aggression, softened with confusion. This wasn't how prey was supposed to behave. Prey ran. Prey screamed. Prey definitely didn't scratch you behind the ears. The cub released the jacket with a small, bewildered chirp. Lyra set her down gently. Sareth immediately pressed against the human's legs, the Vorlon equivalent of a purr rumbling through her small frame. Ambassador Kreeth's mandibles parted in astonishment. Impossible. She has never shown affection to any species outside our own. Predator recognizes predator, Lyra said simply, kneeling to properly greet the cub. Humans might not look like much, Ambassador. But we didn't climb to the top of Earth's food chain by being weak. We just learned to be friendly about it. Around the chamber, nervous laughter began to ripple through the delegates. First one chuckle, then another, until the tension shattered like breaking glass. Even the Methian who had fainted reconstituted itself, emitting what its translator rendered as embarrassed giggles. Tiv stared at Lyra with all 6 of his compound eyes. She wasn't attacking, Lyra corrected, standing as Sareth continued to weave between her legs. She was playing. There's a difference. Every species with predatory ancestry understands play. It's how we learn to hunt, without actually hurting our packmates. Ambassador Kreeth approached slowly, her massive frame somehow less intimidating, as she watched her daughter behave like an oversized puppy around the human. You have younglings on your world that behave this way? We have dozens of species we've domesticated that behave exactly this way, Lyra confirmed. Wolves, cats, ferrets, birds of prey, we've lived alongside predators for millennia. Sometimes we even let them sleep in our beds. The chamber erupted in fresh chatter, this time with a different tone. Not fear, but fascination. Tiv leaned close to Lyra, mandibles clicking rapidly. Do you realize what you just did? You've completely changed the Vorlon diplomatic dynamic. They've been trading on fear for 3 generations. Lyra shrugged, a very human gesture that her translator couldn't quite convey. Maybe that's humanity's real strength. We don't see predators, we see potential friends. It's gotten us into trouble before, but it's also why we're here, standing as equals among species that should terrify us. Sareth yawned again, then curled up on Lyra's boots, apparently deciding the human made an acceptable bed. Ambassador Kreeth's laugh was like grinding stone, but genuine. Perhaps, human Lyra, there is much our species can learn from yours. If you can teach a Vorlon cub gentleness, perhaps you can teach the galaxy that strength and kindness need not be enemies. As the council session finally began, Lyra remained standing at her position, careful not to disturb the sleeping predator at her feet. Around her, delegates whispered and pointed, spreading the story that would ripple across communication networks. The human who made a Vorlon laugh. The human who turned a predator into a pet. The human who proved that sometimes, the most powerful response to aggression is a gentle hand and a knowing smile. Tiv settled beside her, his anxiety replaced with something like pride. Humanity. Fuck yeah, he muttered, testing out the phrase he'd heard human delegates use. Lyra grinned. Now you're getting it.